Hello, this is the Ravens Librarian here with my playthrough of Dawn of War. Going to be doing Mission 5 today. In our last part, we defeated the Orc Warboss on the planet, which in story would hopefully have prevented the Orcs from consuming the planet. Spoiler, that's not going to work. The Orcs are still going to ravage the entire planet. But regardless, after defeating the Orc Warboss, the Blood Raven spotted a suspicious ship, pointing to a possible connection to an enemy faction that they are opposed to. And so, in this mission, we will be investigating this supposed area of interest.
The orcs have been repelled, and their warboss has been defeated. But this war is far from over. The orcs still threaten to overcome several major population centers, and could mass more than a large enough force to overwhelm the Imperial armies present on the planet. We have bought time, nothing more. But this is no longer a primary concern. Our scouts have recovered evidence that the forces of chaos, the great enemy, may be operating on this planet, right under our very noses. We must face this foe wherever they stand. If there is even a chance that they are here, we must seek them out and destroy them. Inquisitor Toth is demanding that we leave the planet, but of all the powers his position grants him, commandeering a space marine company is not one of them. I must admit that I find his presence unwelcome so soon after the events on my homeworld of Cyrene. Inquisitors have a way of inflaming a guilty conscience, and that I do not need right now.
So we'll tackle what the great enemy chaos is in future missions when they become more relevant to the story, but we're going to have to deal with a different faction before then. As you can see on the map, even though we defeated the Orc Warboss, the Orcs don't really seem to be, responding to that in the way some people might have hoped. Though I suspect if the Orc trend actually carries into the game, then what's probably happening is as these different Orc camps are making their moves towards certain cities, then there's probably a decent chunk of infighting going on in these groups. Or if not infighting, then, these aren't actually coordinated groups. They may all be attacking same areas, but they're not actually working together. They're orcs, so they'll prioritize fighting other people over themselves until they get bored. I think for this mission, I'll talk about the Inquisitor. Maybe just talk a little bit about the enemy faction we're going to run into. I think it's important for those of you who don't know to have an idea of what, who's
this
new
warp
guy.
storm could trap us here for a month or for a century. We cannot risk staying here. We must evacuate Tartarus before it arrives in 3 days' time.
The Imperial Guard and Holy Fleet can attend to the evacuation. The Blood Ravens have more pressing matters to contend with.
Such as?
I believe agents of chaos have taken strong root here.
I sense no taint here. Even so, were there a chaos presence on Tartarus, it is better we leave them here with the orcs than waste more lives fighting them. We could wish no worse fate for either of our enemies, and to be trapped with the other. But we must leave here now.
That is a matter for my brothers and I to decide. We will use these 3 days to settle our affairs and satisfy our suspicions. Meanwhile, you have our transports to facilitate evacuation.
Colonel Brom, the captain and I must attend to matters of faith. If you would leave us, please.
But surely this involves me as a...
Forgive me for not being clear on the matter. I said please, when in fact I meant now.
This does involve him. You should have shown him a modicum of respect.
Captain, you uncovered extensive heresy in your home world. Cyrene, was it?
That has nothing to do with the events here on Tartarus.
But I believe they do. You requested the Inquisition undertake an exterminatus, the destruction of your planet's entire populace, which we obliged.
I still fail to see...
Captain, I am not questioning your loyalty.
You better.
But I must wonder if your actions on Cyrene have not affected your judgment.
Backtrack.
Perhaps that was a poor choice of words.
That's better.
I merely fear that you might see chaos, but it does not exist. I ask that as a loyal subject of the Emperor, you serve the Imperium's interest before your own agenda.
That's Space Marine. That's their job.
Captain, that Inquisitor had no right to speak to you in such manner. But perhaps he is right. The coming storm will trap our enemies here, where they can consume one another.
And what if the forces of chaos escape the system before the storm? No. We will not use this freak occurrence as an excuse to avoid our enemies, or our responsibility. They are here for a reason, and we will discover that reason.
We are with you, brother Captain, as always.
There he
The
is.
humans are coming your way in full force. You should hear their heavy feet long before you see them, and smell them long before that.
Orbital Command has indicated the dropship landed in this general proximity. We've discovered a path, Captain. It's obvious someone has been digging here.
Cut by orcs?
I've never seen an orc lend such a careful hand to a task.
If it wasn't orcs, then it must be the forces of chaos. We will follow this path and discover the truth behind what has transpired here.
That's a fair warning so the player doesn't just run for the door and not pay attention. Also, since it gives them the warning of the type of enemy they're going to have to be dealing with. In short, this enemy likes to use stealth as well.
The sacred artifact will now be available to us. Construct it, and we will have access to powerful abilities.
Sure, I'll get right on that as soon as I can. I should have built a monastery.
Faith and duty. By my command. Attack!
So like I said, I won't talk too much about the enemies we're going to be facing. They'll say a few things here and there, but I'll save most of that for the next part if anyone's really curious. So you can skip ahead to that one if you care. Here, I do want to talk, instead I want to talk about this guy right here, the Inquisitor. So the Inquisitors are basically
We are united in his service.
the ultimate police force in the the 40k setting. Now, and for humans, and for police, I want to specify there are other police forces in the setting. They're not the cops, but they are. If you know what Inquisitors are in real life, then the idea is that they are the grandiose space sci-fi, ultra powerful version of that. Their whole thing,
yes, Lord.
is to quite literally investigate everything and everyone
Yes, most beneficent
in
one.
the Imperium
I
Area
shall
secured.
obey.
for even the slightest hint
Initializing build
that they are
The enemy shall know fear.
failing at something, anything that they care about.
Follow me into battle.
And that's like I said, the care point is that they are not, they don't waste their time with petty, minor legalese nonsense. Like, their focus is ensuring that the overall stability of the Imperium is kept. So their job is to go looking for traitors, dangerous, zealots, threats of corruption, heresy, yada yada yada. Both.
Orcs, attack!
Now you can see by the red saying these guys are actually in retreat. They're fleeing.
Wait. They weren't attacking. They were fleeing.
What could
For the
inspire
glory
fear
of
in
the
an orc?
Emperor.
Okay, good. Got to this first. Alright, I should get you out of here before you get
Yes,
ambushed.
Lord. I exist to serve. I will do as you ask.
The enemy we're facing in this chapter is gonna love ambushing my forces whenever I'm not looking.
Yes, most beneficent one.
Build as many of these as possible.
Initializing build protocol.
Area secured.
But no,
I await your instructions.
put the other
I
person.
shall obey. Build routine 721
Praise the
initiated.
Emperor.
So the Inquisitors are in charge of
For the
investigating,
glory of the Emperor.
and their job is incredibly important for the setting. You know, the Imperium considers them extremely valuable, so they are given
I shall
a
not fail.
lot.
Something is not right here. These orc bodies do not look like they were dispatched by Imperial hands. Attack! We
Also,
must proceed with caution.
Also, if they had been, you would have, been told if there was an Imperial regiment in this area.
Chapter.
Yeah, I mean, the guy in charge of the Imperial army is literally here. So, point is, the Inquisitors
My aim shall not falter.
oversee having. There it
We
is.
were mistaken about the presence of the forces of chaos.
Be it Eldar or Chaos, I will have answers either way. Press on.
Now, the good news is because I have these guys, commanders, special units, these guys have essentially a lot of plot armor for the game. So they can die, like you've seen it in previous missions. You know, they're not invulnerable, but they have higher stats than normal grunts. So it actually gets a lot easier to progress through this mission early on because I don't have to worry about getting a lot of
My
forces.
aim shall not falter.
Now, that thing that we just blew up was a portal. This faction, the Eldar, like I said, gonna talk about them in more detail
For the Emperor.
later, but suffice to say, they use that to teleport through the map. So they use that in universe and out of universe. For the game, it's
Yes,
their way of.
most beneficent one. As you wish.
It gives them total advantage in terms of
Yes, most beneficent
they're able to
one.
bypass a lot of nonsense from me because they can just do that whenever they feel like it. They don't have to worry about me getting in their way.
Take the battle to the enemy.
Alright, these guys might be able to destroy this. They get enough. You guys done? No? This is basically what I gotta worry about.
For the Emperor!
Good news is these guys aren't that tough. But sooner or later, that's gonna do a lot of damage to me. So
Yes, Lord.
just finish building. Pretty sure I'm gonna need that later. I don't have a lot of space here, so. Oh. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. There we go.
Initializing build protocol.
How much do I need? 5 more seconds. There we go.
Yes, Lord.
First,
While the enemies
move
of the
them away.
Emperor still draw breath, there can be no peace. By my command.
So the Inquisitors are in charge of investigating corruption and dangers to the Imperium. They're given a lot of power and a lot of leeway to do it. There's a key point here. This guy, the Inquisitor, he can't boss around the Space Marines. Technically, but there's a lot of.
Dark Reapers, fall back. We need Rhino transport tanks. They will allow us to get through unscathed. Attack the Dark Reapers on those cliffs above.
That audio clip is trying to get really annoying.
Apothecaries are standing by to tend to our wounded.
That's because
Build them at the sacred artifact.
Yeah, okay. That's because I built this spin-off building.
Rhino transports are now available.
Yes, Lord.
Build them at the machine
As
cult.
you wish.
Ow. No.
As you wish.
What would you like? This day shall be a glorious one for the Imperium.
Alright, I messed that up.
By my command, attack!
To the Relic!
Yeah, sorry about that.
By my command, attack!
These four should be fine for now.
I await your instructions.
Hmm. Weird. Wait,
Under fire.
see, not. Oh,
Build routine 721
that's why I hadn't finished
initiated.
building it. So yeah, their job is to investigate and so they have authority, but they can't boss around the Space Marines.
I await your instructions.
Like there are some situations where maybe they could, but for the most part, the idea is that Space Marines are pretty independent within the Imperium. So yeah, these things are the most annoying because your best strategy is to try to destroy this thing as quickly as possible, and then deal with whatever's left. Because so long as this thing's here, technically they can send in just send in troops from in. Take care of that. Yeah, they'll mop up what's left.
Taking heavy
Yes,
fire.
most
I am
beneficent
aware.
one. With all due haste.
So in the case of the Inquisitor, if he wanted to, he could just order the Imperial Guard to, do. Basically, if they don't want to be get in trouble with him, they basically gotta do what he says. Now again, because there's a Space Marine chapter here, there is sort of a conflict of authority where you'll have just like
Walk
how
softly and carry a big
the
gun.
Inquisitor can boss them around.
Faith and duty.
You guys get here now.
Agreed.
Stay here for now. Right, this thing finished up. So the idea is that I need a vehicle called a Rhino in this ride vehicle, and so they can basically soak up the damage that this Death Valley here, this entire area is filled with Eldar units meant to like
Marine squad deployed.
shoot us from down here. You guys moving? All right, good. They're moving. So the goal is build that, get them through the area where they're just going to be taking bullets instead of being able to shoot back efficiently, and then, finish off the Eldar.
Rhino transport deployed.
Marine squad deployed. We stand ready. Ever vigilant.
Rhino transport deployed.
Here to serve. I shall obey.
Marine squad deployed. Awaiting orders. We are the Emperor's chosen.
So the Inquisitor's thing will basically be show up, investigate any place for
Marine squad
what they
deployed.
consider to be criminal or dangerous behavior, and then proceed appropriately. Depending on the situation, the Inquisitor might just execute a person, arrest some people, then it escalates from there based on just how bad things get. And because this is 40k, it can get really
Direct
bad.
us to the enemy.
An obvious example of this is the thing that they were just talking about, where the whole one of the examples, even back then when I first played this game, that sort of very quickly, very apologetically hint
Awaiting orders.
at how, messed up this setting is and can get,
As ordered.
is the Exterminatus, which is, as they already said, the complete and utter destruction of the entire planet
Yes,
and
my
its
lord.
population.
Faith is our shield.
I make some progress here. And that is straight up what it is. Like, it is what they do.
Rhino here.
Come on.
Rhino here.
You gotta watch out where you put stuff in this game, because if the spacing is not just right,
Going straight to the front lines.
the AI will get stuck moving places. This area is meant to like soak up damage if you're not careful. Another move here. Another one.
The enemy is attacking. Move out.
Rhino here.
Squad deployed. We are the Emperor's chosen. Initiating attack protocol 23. Direct us to the enemy. Maintain attack formation. Weapons at ready. It is time.
So now I can just go through this more normally.
Maintain attack formation.
Order them to.
Orders received, brother.
Yeah, I got stuck.
Attacking.
Come on.
Engaging the enemy. Maintain attack formation. Fear denies faith. Moving out. We are the Emperor's chosen.
So the Exterminatus is the example. It's
Weapons
the
at ready.
one of
It
the
is time.
big in-universe examples of how bad it can get.
Commencing attack.
The setup for Exterminatus is there's different ways in which it can end up happening, but I don't want to get into too many details, and it tackles something that happens later in the mission. But in general,
Orders received.
Exterminatus happens when the person who can order it, usually an Inquisitor, but I think there are other characters who can do it. But when the Inquisitor decides, reasonably or not, that the situation on the planet has gotten so bad and so out of control that there's just no realistic way that they'll be able to retake control from whatever it is that's causing the disorder.
Stay vigilant, brothers.
And so, rather than let this place, the chaos of that planet to spread and get worse,
Fight it in the name of the Emperor.
they'll instead be like, yeah, no, kill everybody.
Ever vigilant. Weapons at ready. Ever vigilant. Direct us to the enemy. What is your order? Heresy grows from idleness. Understood. What is your order?
But as before, in this
Area is secure.
good
At
job.
your command.
In this situation, the
Understood.
Inquisitor hasn't gotten to that point yet.
Fear
Like,
denies
this is not.
faith.
I'm bringing up the
Awaiting
Exterminatus
orders.
because they brought it up, from a previous something that happened
Understood.
in a past location. The main character, the captain's homeworld, and so. But the idea is that if the Inquisitor deems it necessary, they can resort to those extremes.
Walk softly and carry a big gun.
And the captain's already, firmly established that in his mind, the Blood Ravens as a Space Marines chapter, Space Marines in general. They don't have to
Take refuge within our armor.
follow orders from people like the Inquisitor.
We are the Emperor's chosen.
Oh, I keep forgetting to tell him to do that.
Yes, Lord?
Gotta watch out when you tell him to do this, because
I shall obey.
you mess up, the AI will just get in the vehicle.
Marine squad deployed.
I have awoken. I am the instrument of his will.
Not bringing them in yet, I'm gonna use them for backup.
Moving out.
Yes, most beneficent one. I exist to serve.
Capture. Marine squad deployed.
This day shall be a glorious one for the Imperium.
If you say so.
My aim shall not falter.
I mean, you're using a chainsword. I don't know if that counts as aim.
I have awoken.
Alright, you can join up later.
My aim shall not falter.
There they are. So yeah, this is something the Eldar love to do. They cloak, teleport. Now in this case, they're being very silly because the AI is scripted to just do this, regardless of what's going on. At least in normal. Maybe on harder difficulties, they're a lot more, either a lot more smart about it, or they're a lot more persistent. These are Banshees. They're their elite, well, one of their elite melee units. Visitor vehicle. Like, we'll get into further detail in the next part, but I should at least say some stuff about the Eldar, aside from just their tactics. They're, for a bit of a cliche there, in terms of description, not necessarily that, it's an accurate one. They're the elf-like fantasy character of this space sci-fi setting. What I mean is that they are one of the old races. That's a big part of their character. They, to them, humans are the newbies in the setting. And for the Eldar, they are, it's part of the joke in their name. Eldar, Elder. Yeah, they're a big part of their society, attitude, and mentality. Not just in
We are the Emperor's chosen.
To almost all the other races, and even humans, especially humans in some cases. Is
yes, my lord.
We are the first ones. We were the first ones here, and we are way better than all of you.
By his word.
Today the enemy shall know fear. Follow me into battle.
Hopefully keep making some progress. Oh, I just completely forgot. Like, something I should talk about is the thing the Inquisitor mentioned at the start of the mission. Something called a warp storm. The warp is a very complicated thing in the setting, so I think I'll save that.
At least we know that the orcs and Eldar are not in league together.
Oh, yeah.
When one enemy attacks another, it does not mean they aren't in league. Just that they are living up to their lack of honor.
And those who lack honor deserve death. By my command, attack!
this is fairly common. And yet,
Today the enemy shall know fear.
The Inquisition will destroy it.
yeah, before I forget. So the Warp Storm is
Follow my lead.
something particular to this setting. It has similarities to other things in other sections, but in this setting, what it is, it's a devastating phenomenon that
I serve mankind.
can basically trap anyone and anything that's in its vicinity from being able to travel outside of it. Like, this setting has space travel. They've already mentioned stuff like this, and it has forms of faster than light travel, so they can get very far away. But for reasons that are tied to what the warp is, the warp storm makes it so that no means of FTL is very efficient. So once it's like I said, once the warp storm hits this planet, anyone and anything that's there and that's still here is pretty heavily guaranteed to be stuck here for as long as that storm sticks around. So the idea that they need to leave before the storm arrives, it is not totally invented for, as an excuse. Like, there's a very real reason why they might need to get the hell out of here before that storm kicks in. Don't worry here. Yeah. That whole revival mechanic is basically what I meant by having plot armor.
Fear our wrath. For the glory taking the Imperium. Commencing attack. Strategic point identified.
Faith is eternal. Moving out.
Awaiting orders. We are the Emperor's chosen.
I await your instructions.
Probably. There he is.
None can stand before the Inquisition.
Something important for the setting, not in this game, but for the setting. When this guy talks about, obviously representing the Inquisition and so on and so forth, obviously he's an Inquisitor, so he represents the Inquisition by simply the extension of him being a member of it. But something that's important that I didn't know when I first played this game is that the human factions, the Imperium as a whole in the setting, is a very politically complicated setting. So this guy may be an Inquisitor, and he may work for the Inquisition, but he is not necessarily a go-to example of what you can expect from all Inquisitors, because there's a whole gambit of personalities and attitudes when it comes to the Inquisitors.
We deliver into battle.
On alert, brothers. The enemy must be nearby.
I'm just saying that so that the idea is that, just like how these guys, the Blood Ravens, are not necessarily the ergo go-to expectation for all Space Marine chapters. The guy on the vehicle right now, or on the other one, the Inquisitor, is not necessarily an example of what to expect from all Inquisitors. Just to give a bare bones example without getting too deep into it, is that inside the Inquisition there are different factions that are based on, at least at first, their priority of what they're involved in investigating. So, as a simple example, one of them would be the guys who investigate dangers from just outright corruption. So their job would simply be to investigate actual agents of the Imperium and see whether or not they're being incompetent or outright, treasonous. A different Inquisitor would focus on investigating
I am ready to pass judgment.
whether certain human factions inside the Imperium are being manipulated or influenced by alien influences. A big example of this are the Eldar themselves, the ones we're about to face in this mission.
No one will stop us.
That we are facing in this mission. They, in some situations, an Inquisitor might be sent to a planet, and he or she might discover that there's an Eldar faction, for lack of a better word, because I want to save that for the next mission. And in that,
can stand before the Inquisition.
You keep saying that.
None can stand before the Inquisition.
Okay, he's stuck in a loop.
Taking hits.
All right, this is gonna be a pretty bloody trench. Right.
The Inquisition destroyed.
That is actually very silly from the Eldar perspective because they, in comparison to the human faction, are supposed to be the numerically at a disadvantage faction. So this strategy of theirs kind of makes sense for them, but also kind of doesn't, because all they're basically doing is just throwing, hordes of armies at me.
No one will stop us.
Like, it clearly is working. Like,
we think alike.
Like, I'm taking a big risk and I'm losing a lot of people. I'm pretty sure I just lost an entire Space Marine chapter without paying attention. Unless they're in the back row, anyway.
None can stand before the Inquisition. Yes?
Direct us to the enemy. At your command.
On alert, brothers. The enemy must be nearby.
Rhino transport is prepared. Rhino here.
A very cheap tactic I used to do in this mission would be to just make a couple of these and then just send them on a beeline for this area and just toss the AI there. Since technically the goal is just to get them to that spot in the map. I'm aware.
Here to serve.
And that would be my strategy. It'd just be like, oh, well, I got there, so it counts. I won. Ignoring that there's like a giant death camp of Eldar just in between me and what I just got to. Game didn't seem to mind.
Faith is eternal.
Probably use this opportunity to
Fear denies faith.
actually.
Yes, my lord. Awaiting orders, as ordered. Marine squad deployed. I have awoken.
Rhino ready.
Like I said, common problem here is the AI not figuring out how to get to where I wanted to.
We carry the virtuous.
On alert, brothers.
Marine squad
the enemy
deployed.
must be nearby.
It is better to die for the Emperor than live for yourself. By his word.
Alright, so here what sometimes happens is the Rhino gets stuck because it can't make a straight line because this thing's in its way.
Marine squad deployed.
So in that example I was going to give, that some inquisitors would investigate corruption from just normal human, greed and incompetence, and other inquisitors would investigate corruption as a result of outside alien influences. And this again is something that's very easy to tell if you pay attention to the way they talk. Hopefully this guy will be able to do some work.
It is better to die for the Emperor than live for yourself. I shall end you.
Rhino transport is prepared.
Squad deployed.
Going straight to the front lines.
Ever vigilant. Understood.
Rhino here.
And in lieu of their authority, which they've already mentioned, is that ignoring the circumstances where that's not really true, because there's nuance and political complications and so on and so forth. In general,
There is no such thing as innocence.
the idea when an inquisitor shows up is whatever they want, whatever they need, they get. Because by and large, the inquisitor is the highest authority anywhere in the Imperium when they show up. Again, that is not actually true in every single circumstance. There are plenty of examples that can be used.
Command me.
But they're the exception that proves the rule. When an Inquisitor shows up somewhere, their word goes. In this situation, we're merely seeing one of the exceptions, which is technically the Space Marines are part of the Imperium, and they're, the Imperium has authority over them. Now, but in reality, Space Marines are very independent. There are exceptions. Some Imperial groups, some Space Marine chapters either prefer or they just accept the authority of the Imperium. Sometimes it'll depend on the exact situation. Other times it'll be, it'll depend on what they're facing or what the Imperium is offering them. Alright, we're making progress.
Establishing a secondary base near this location will give us a forward position with which to engage the enemy.
What the heck do you think I've been doing this whole time? No.
Faith is eternal. I will be there soon.
I promise if I'm not careful, my army gets cut off.
At last, back to war. Charge!
Yeah, nice try.
Commencing attack.
And so if the Inquisitor, in this case the Inquisitor tries to tell the Space Marines what to do, sometimes the Space Marine might listen to them, but technically the Space Marine has to, but really they don't. So, and in some stories like this one, that can cause a whole lot of infighting and a whole lot of backstabbing and a whole lot of distrust. That this appears to be their main. Yeah, because this is where they. Come on. Alright, managed to cut them off. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's probably still a few Eldar here, but
Moving out.
once they're on this spot, it's pretty much done.
Knowledge is power. Hide it well.
I just need to get Tim.
While the enemies of the Emperor still draw breath, there can be no peace.
Get in, please. There we go.
Rhino ready.
Now I just need,
Going straight to the front lines.
like I said before, my strategy was usually just get those two here and then just end the fight.
Yes, I am prepared. We think alike.
Rhino here.
Drop me here and await further orders.
Not
My
Makarov.
fate will leave my shield.
And we can just assume they'll mop up the rest.
So the good Inquisitor senses no chaos here. How fortunate for the Imperium such keen-eyed eagles stand vigil over her gates.
What dark crafts have these Eldar invoked?
None. At least not here. The servants of chaos sacrificed this poor guardsman themselves.
To what end, Isidore?
I know not. I believe the altar is a marker, a waypoint in a map that leads elsewhere. Someone defaced many portions of text. Regardless of what chaos seeks here, the altar requires a sacrifice of blood, or more likely, a life.
So
Brother
corn.
Isidore, you have an hour to study the altar. Document everything as is our tradition. Then burn it, lest its taint infect us all.
But Gabriel, there is much to learn from here. We should not be too eager to...
Learn what? Chaos does not teach. It misleads and it betrays. There is nothing to learn here, save for our next course. These transports have been damaged somehow. Make the repairs, and be quick.
Brother Isidore, what betrayal have you wrought? Disabling your own vehicles? Harboring artifacts despite your good captain's instructions?
Gabriel does not understand. He does not appreciate the significance of this.
No, but I do.
Quiet, heretic. Once I find what you seek, I will use it against you for the glory of the Emperor and my brothers.
You wish to deal me a harsh blow, to prove your strength and worth. Well, then come to me. I wait at Mount Korath.
Have no fear, sorcerer. I will be there.
As it's fairly obvious, you can tell that something is going on with the librarian. I think in the next part, I should talk about a bit, or at least a little bit, about what the librarian is, as in terms of the faction, what their job is, and how that conversation is going on without anyone else in the group noticing. It's, you can probably guess to the reason, but I'm talking about it anyway, so I should explain it. And hopefully in the next one I'll remember to actually get into more detail as to the Eldar and their whole thing. Since in the next one they'll actually make an official appearance. Here they were purposefully being sneaky. And I think that's about it. Gonna be an interesting fight in the next one, if I can actually use the units well. But hopefully you'll come for the next mission. Until then, I've been the Raven's Librarian, and have a good one.